partner with Axon, you immediately gain access to a full range of products and solutions designed to meet the complex needs of today's grower. We carry all major brands and sizes of tires and wheels. We specialize in large diameter wheels for large equipment. We have one of the largest OEM replacement wheel inventories in North America. Known for extreme flotation setups, duals, and triples, we have wheels for all makes and models of tractors, sprayers, combines, and grain carts. If we don't have the wheel in stock, we'll custom build, sandblast, and paint in-house. There isn't a more vast inventory in North America dedicated to helping dealers move more iron. With facilities on the West Coast and in the heart of the Midwest, leverage our 230,000 square feet of indoor inventory to solve any problem a grower may have. Move more iron with Axon.
Moving iron.
Hello and welcome to Moving Iron Podcast. Markets with Chip Nellinger. This edition of Moving Iron Podcast is brought to you by Axon Tire, helping dealers move more iron for the past 100 years. More information, go to axontire.com. Axon Tire has a couple great gifts to give away. They got an Alliance flashlight and an Alliance ball cap. So if you want one of those, send an email to marketing@axontire.com and with all your details, and they will send that ball cap to you. Just send that email to marketing@axontire.com. Also, if you're one of the first 150 people to sign up for the Moving Iron Summit, you get $50 off your registration, courtesy of the folks at Axon Tire. So check that out. More information about that, go to MovingIronLLC.com and click on the 2023 Moving Iron Summit tab up in the upper right corner. Valley Transportation has been hauling ag and construction equipment across the country for the past 33 years. Call Parker at 800-657-4910 for all your trucking needs. At Valley Transportation, our goal is to help you reach yours. Powered by Farm Direct. Powered by Farm Credit, Ag Direct. Freudian slip there. Ag Direct is built for today's agriculture with simple applications, quick responses, competitive rates, and generous, flexible terms. Ag Direct offers buy, lease, and refinance options for almost all types of new and used equipment. Non-recourse and timely funding back to the dealership plus sales incentives. No other ag equipment lender works like Ag Direct. Learn more by calling your Ag Direct territory manager or 888-525-9805 or visit us at agdirect.com. Tractor Zoom has access to over $20 billion in heavy equipment sales. Tractor Zoom's Iron Comps is the industry's trusted solution for transparent equipment values and optimal pricing insights. And lastly, this podcast is brought to you by Anvil AppWorks. Their Dealer Connect CRMI app with integrated inventory management is an affordable Salesforce-based solution for your dealership. Create connected customer experience and transform how you work today. Chip Nellinger is with Blue Reef Agri Marketing out of Morton, Illinois. It's nice to come on and talk about what's happening in the market. Chip, how you doing, man?
Hey, good. Casey, how you doing?
Not too bad. We had I saw a report come out yesterday, and my area here, January was the wettest January on record in 130 years. So we have a lot of good moisture coming into our very drought-stricken area, but I think we're just about ready to be considered a drought right now. So we're not an extreme drought. So we're working our way up that scale. But
fixing it. It's heading the right way.
It's heading the right way. Looking at the weather patterns around us, looks like a lot of part of the wheat areas though are still struggling with moisture and what we see happen there. So Chip, as you look at the wheat market right now domestically, what are your thoughts there and the condition reports that keep coming out keep getting worse?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit early here in February for the market to really care much about the plains. That crop went into dormancy, I believe, the poorest rated wheat crop in history. And, there's been a little snow and some rain here and there in some areas this winter so far, but still relatively dry. But I think it's just still a little bit too early for the market to care a whole lot. You got a lot of other outside factors as well. This Russian wheat crop, even though there's sanctions on them, look to be a large crop, and they keep trickling, out enough on the world market to kind of keep things, stabilized. And, there's still cheaper sources of wheat than U.S. wheat. Now, I do think if you get into, April, May, and get this crop out of dormancy, and you're still seeing problems, and they don't have any better moisture, then the market might start caring a little more. You could even see maybe some abandonment in some areas. There's some talk of that with where corn prices are, where bean prices are. I know in some areas they don't have that ability to switch, but I just think it's a touch early as far as the wheat goes. Now, with all that being said, it is way overstretched. You go back almost a month now to the January crop report. We threw several bearish things at the wheat market, and it stopped going lower. And so, the funds have a massive short position on north of, at one point, north of 70,000 contracts. They probably pared that back a little bit. So, wouldn't take much of a spark, and you could see a nice short covering bounce out of it. But, unfortunately, I think we're still a couple months away from the wheat market focusing much on the conditions and the potential of that wheat crop in the southern plains.
Right. So there's a job report that's coming out, I think today, right? That today the job report comes out?
Came out today, yeah. We added a little over 500,000 jobs, better than expected. It's got the dollar up sharply. Interest rates are kind of they're fair, a nice amount higher. The stock market has had a huge run higher, and it's correcting lower today. So we'll see. It doesn't make the Fed's job any easier because they want to kind of slow things down, and we keep adding jobs, and the labor market's still really tight, and that's not going to go very far to help ease some of this inflation that the Fed's trying to pour some cold water on.
Yeah. So that was quite a bit, like you're talking about the expectations being higher than what you talked about. And when you start looking at the price of food, and we see at the grocery store, my wife bought some eggs the other day that were, I think they were at like $8 or something like that. And, the super duper double organic, free range, everything's wonderful eggs were like $5. So you start looking at all the stuff that's going on that. You start looking at the price of beef and where we're at there. I did buy a brisket the other day. I'm going to smoke brisket over the weekend. And now I'd noticed the price of that had come down significantly from what it was too. So I don't know if I just got a lucky break there or what, but when you're looking at that stuff, Chip, and you look at this job report that's coming out, there's a lot of signals out there that are still pointing towards, even though we see this contraction in the marketplace and all these different things happening, the price of beef, milk, and eggs are still really inflated, and there's really no of any kind of relief on the horizon here. Yeah,
and wages haven't increased.
Haven't gone up, yeah.
And
Exactly.
we only have about one time in history to kind of compare that to, and that was back in the 70s. And we're following along. Actually, if you put a chart of what inflation did in the 70s with where it started and where we're at right now, in the 70s you had they started raising interest rates. You kind of pulled inflation back a little bit, and then you kind of had another push higher until we finally kind of turned the corner. And you could easily see that again. I think that's what everyone's trying to ascertain right now. The Federal Reserve is telling you, they just raised another 0.25% the other day. I think everyone says, oh, it's temporary. They're going to go back lower. A lot of people thinking by the end of the year, they're going to be back going lower. And they've told you the whole time, this thing's going to be higher for longer than what you think. I mean, they're telling you what the game plan is here. They want to slow inflation down. So they either have to keep raising or keep them higher longer than what people think. I'm not sure how it's going to play out. It's all a big experiment for the most part. And so there's no real rule book on, what the next page should be. What's the next play of this game? They're kind of, grasping at straws right now.
And so you take a look at that, and you start looking at cold storage reports. You start looking at cattle on feed reports. You start looking at those kind of things, and that the cold storage reports, we're starting to see some buildup in there that we previously, 2 months ago, we were starting to see that really kind of shrink off, and those supplies are starting to dwindle. But you look at cattle on feed reports and all those things, and there's just the scarcity thing is starting to kind of creep its way back in because of what we were doing with the cattle herd.
Yeah, for sure. And you saw that here earlier this week. You had a semi-annual cattle inventory report. It showed 3 to 4%, drops across the board. the market rallied, the cattle market rallied sharply into that, kind of had a buy the rumor, sell the fact, setback, and now we're rallying again.
Yeah.
Any way you cut it, weights are coming down. The monthly cattle on feed reports are shrinking compared to where they were a year ago. Now the inventory report is down as expected because of basically 2.5 years worth of drought and breeding stock liquidation, and now you're going to see it. So the numbers are down. We've talked about this before too. It's like you've got a wildly bullish situation, in the cattle market, but is the economy going to be strong enough? Is the consumer going to be strong enough to hold the domestic demand together as prices go up with the shrinking inventory? We're not at all-time highs, but we're within shouting distance of all-time highs in cattle. I don't know why we wouldn't eventually, meet and exceed that. And, on the pork side, we haven't seen the expansion for 2 years, probably because of high labor costs or lack of, being able to find labor and high construction costs. So, the pork side is kind of steady. The poultry side has had, some health problems with avian flu and whatnot. That's part of the reason why eggs are so high priced, that you mentioned. And so that's also a concern on the, on the grain side, on the feed side, is, we haven't seen the expansion yet. So we're actually shrinking, and, it all goes together here. And I think that's one of the big headwinds on the grain side, is that domestic feed side is going to be hard to, it's been sticky to expand. It will eventually, but I don't think it's right now. And so that's going to, curtail feed demand. We're already struggling with ethanol. We're kind of seeing that shrink a little bit. We saw Brazil just kind of in a thumb your nose type situation. They just put back some, I think, like 16% import tariff on U.S. ethanol. They have been a big buyer of U.S. ethanol the last couple of years, and so that's a concern. And you're also knocking on the door of what looks like to be a record Brazilian bean crop and a pretty good first crop of corn. And they're rushing to get beans out of the field so they can plant their second crop corn behind it. And if there's no weather problems with that, all of a sudden we're going to have plenty of corn and beans in the world, where we've really had tight stocks for the last 3 years. So could be kind of seeing this pendulum shift from very tight stocks and strong demand to larger stocks and slowing demand. That's not a good combination. Not going to see that in the next 2 weeks, 2 months, but slowly over the next 6 to 12 months, you could kind of see this thing shift to a different dynamic than what we've been used to the last 3 years.
So I'd like your opinion on this. This is something I've been thinking about and following and kicking around. When you're looking at ethanol and electric cars, you're looking at soybeans and vegetable oil and those kind of things, and how that, biodiesel and, Delta wants to tell everybody in the world how many gallons of aviation fuel that they've used. That's renewable sources and this, that, and other thing. When you're looking at that, and there's this big push to get biodiesel, do you anticipate more people looking at soybeans this year saying, I'm going to plant 25% more soybeans, or 10% more soybeans, or 5% more soybeans than I did last year, and because there's going to be this ethanol-ish type like boom in the biodiesel side of this?
Well, I think that's the market's probably in the next 60 days going to kind of fight that out as far as how many acres we're going to plant. There is a tremendous amount of this biodiesel, demand that's getting ready to be put online, and more within the next 2 and 3 years. Unfortunately, it might come at a time, if we continue to have big crops out of the southern hemisphere, where our exports, the extra biodiesel demand might only offset what we lose in export competitiveness to the southern hemisphere. So it's good demand, don't get me wrong, but I don't know if it's quick enough. I don't know if it's all going to be there for this 23 crop and enough to get people to want to switch acres. I still think that's still an economic decision, and inputs. A lot of inputs were purchased and put on already at the highest level ever. I have heard that some fertilizer and nitrogen prices are coming down. So if there's any swing acres, particularly in the South, and corn input costs are coming down, that may kind of be enough to secure some corn acres on guys that, we're maybe talking about switching over to beans. I think it's really up in the air still. And I'm not sure the biodiesel thing is assured enough yet to get people to switch. I think it still comes down to economics and, what's it cost to produce an acre of corn, what's it cost to produce an acre of beans, and what are the current price levels that producers are facing. So I think you're about to fight that out in the market here, over the next couple of months.
Yeah. So you look at corn, wheat, soybeans, cotton, all those major cash crops that are out there. Every one of them are screaming for more acres, right? I mean, if you could plant more acres to wheat, you would. If you plant more cotton acres, you would. I mean, there's just so many different things going on. With this biodiesel thing coming on, and like you said, 23, maybe 24 is a better 25 year crop years are a better mover on this. If you were to sit back and look at this and considering where everything's at from a supply, outcome and what that looks like, where do you think these acres come from? And where do you think you see the biggest boom in soybeans that out of the ordinary area anyway?
Yeah, that is a great question, right? We've gotten out of the typical acreage mix a little bit the last few years. Some of it's been prevent plant, some of it's been abandoned acres because of drought. Typically we plant about 180 plus million acres of corn and beans total. So there's a couple ways it could play out. Number one is we don't have to shift the acres at all because we lose some of our exports to Brazil, but make up for it with domestic biodiesel, and it just kind of evens out. And we don't have to find 3 or 4 or 5 million more bean acres. That's one way it could play out. But the other way is if we're starting to overwhelm, the demand side here, and we do have to expand. That is a great question. Where does it come from? There's still a lot of swing acres out there. There's still a lot of acres that are in CRP. If it's in CRP and has been for 5 or 10 years, it's probably not the most productive farm ground. But that's always the question. The thing that I didn't even realize that's until recently is through the renewable fuel standard, we're allowed to use Canadian, like canola and Canadian seed oil crops as part of our biodiesel blend. So that was a little bit of a shocker to me. Shame on me for not knowing that for all these years. So maybe it could come from imports. We've seen that. I mean, as strange as it sounds, we have imported beans from Brazil before to the East Coast. I'm not so sure we won't see that again, this year, because things are very, very tight as far as ending stocks go here. And it looks like Brazil's going to have a big surplus of beans. So wouldn't be shocked by summertime if you're not seeing some imports of Brazilian beans into the East Coast. So there's a lot of ways that could play out. The funny thing about the market is if you keep it free and don't mess with it, the economics of a free market work out. Either you get the acres generated from somewhere, you get the import from somewhere. The market will fix itself if you don't put too many hands in it. And so I'm sure over the next 3 to 5 years, it'll fix itself one way or the other, a combination of all that.
Yeah. It's amazing if you just leave something alone long enough, it'll turn back around to the better. When you force it, you always end up getting something broke. So exactly. But we continue to try to micromanage and mess with markets and don't never learn our lesson, apparently. What's that saying Ronald Reagan had? What's the how many words, we're from the government, we're here to help thing. That's,
yeah, run the other way.
Run the other way. Right. So, all right. Good stuff as usual. Folks want to reach out to you and get more information about what you got going on over at Blue Reef. What's the best way to do that?
Yeah, just give us a call at our office, 309-550-7213. This thing's going to get treacherous in 23. I really am. I don't want to be the sky is falling guy, but it's going to be much more challenging in 23 and 24 than it has been the last 3 years.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. Well, Chip, I appreciate you being on the podcast, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Casey.
Right on. I'm Casey Seymour with Moving Iron Podcast. Check me out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Moving Iron LLC, LinkedIn and Moving Iron Podcast, and check out the video version of this over on YouTube at the Moving Iron Podcast YouTube channel. You can find more information about everything Moving Iron related at MovingIronLLC.com. And if you want to take advantage of that $50 discount from Axon, go to MovingIronLLC.com in the upper right-hand corner, click on the 2023 Moving Iron Summit and get registered there. And that will give you that discount. So with that, I'm Casey Seymour with Chip Nellinger. Smooth Smart folks. Out.
Moving iron in the 21st century. Hard-working people working hard for you and me. Moving iron, time and time